What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 347. My name is Steve, and I'm one of the co-hosts. As always, I'm joined by
Ronald.
And Jonald.
That's what it actually is. I've wondered if you shortened it. Makes a lot more sense now.
Mm-hmm.
How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Good. Excited.
Yeah, we got a good batch of topics tonight.
Yeah. A lot of things on the docket.
Yeah, a lot of things on the docket.
Yeah.
Counselor.
I object.
There you go.
Sustained. Just wanted to say those.
I hope this is going somewhere.
Yeah.
I've even got my glasses. I can kind of be playing with my glasses. All right.
Yeah. Like I got some papers I can look like I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I wasn't provided that information as evidence, Bay.
You can't unring the bell, Steve. You can't unring the bell.
Right. So we're gonna go through some Marvel talks. We had Comic-Con last week, and lots of different things were announced. But I mean, a lot of people were obviously talking about Marvel. We kind of intentionally refrained from talking about a lot of Marvel last week, or any at all, because of Comic-Con and knowing that they were going to kind of be announcing some stuff. So we'll talk about that here at the top. We're gonna get into John's pick for required viewing for Psycho 2. And then I think John and Ron are going to talk about Jordan Peele's Nope, because they both saw that in theaters, thankfully. So I'm excited to hear what you guys thought about that. But let's go ahead and jump off with some Marvel conversation. Where to start?
Well, right before we started recording, Steve, you seemed like you had some sort of hot takes boiling up. So I don't know, maybe we can get you to kick off this segment. Basically, just to let listeners listen. Hey, listeners, listen to this. If you don't know what we're talking about, what they announced this last weekend, a lot of the Marvel stuff, it was like they just sort of put in perspective their plan for the future at a time when people have been saying, what's the plan right now? What is Marvel really up to? What are they doing? So I felt like in a lot of ways, the way that this whole thing was structured was almost to say, shut up if you're worried about Phase 4. Which Phase 4 has been, and this is the insanely nerdy part of this, if you follow this, you know. If you don't, it sounds like nonsense. But the Marvel movies are pictured in phases. They plan them out. They plan sometimes movies to be different or similar within a phase. For instance, the first 3 phases is what ended with the movie, Endgame, and then there was the Spider-Man movie that was kind of like a little tag on, I think, considered part of Phase 3. But maybe I'm wrong about that. And that was called the Infinity Saga. They have just announced that all the stuff that's come out since then has been part of the build up to the multiverse saga, and that the next 2 phases are going to be the furthering and the conclusion of that. So they kind of, I guess, I don't know that they maybe would have soothed anyone's troubled brow about the state of what they're putting out, but at least for those people who were saying, what's the plan? Where's this story supposed to be going? Where's that direction we used to feel when we were watching all these other movies? Now we kind of know what they seem to be leading up to, which is another pair of Avengers movies in like 2025, is it, or 2026? That are going to involve the villain Kang. There's a movie called The Kang Dynasty, Avengers 5, but just Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, followed by Avengers: Secret Wars, which is one of the biggest subtitles you could put on one of these movies, because there have been 2 massive comic book events, one in the 80s and one recently, that used the name Secret Wars, and I have a feeling they'll probably do a blending of the 2, as they've done whenever they invoke the name of a classic comic run. So that's a lot to take in if you don't care about Marvel, but for the people that like these movies, this was sort of reason to maybe be excited, reason to say, okay, now I know which pieces of this pie I'm looking forward to. Right. They also announced when the Fantastic Four movie is coming out. It's coming out in just over 2 years from now, the fall of 2024. So, I don't know, a lot of big announcements, a lot of things falling into place, not a lot of specifics beyond what we already know. People at SDCC got to see a lot of footage that we won't see for a few months, but some of that sounds exciting. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I mean, before we started recording, we were talking about the Wakanda Forever trailer that they revealed.
Yes.
Which, obviously looks amazing. It's kind of mind blowing that like there was kind of conversation going into it of whether it would actually still come out in the fall, because so little is known about it and so little had been seen for it, let alone a teaser or a trailer of this sort. But like any images, that wasn't a leak, like nothing official. So it was kind of really cool and reassuring, and just a reminder of just like, what that franchise in this franchise means to Marvel, and just as a franchise of its own, really, because of what Black Panther was. One of those moments in pop culture, beyond most of any of the other Marvel films that came out, with the exception of maybe some of the Avengers films and Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, none of them really kind of had the moment that Black Panther had. And both in terms of its financial success, awards nominations that it received, which is such a rare thing from, comic book films. So yes, to see a trailer come out for it, to see the cast and crew talk about it a bit, and some of the footage that came out of Comic-Con, for me, was really a positive, reassuring, like, just move, because like you said, John, we've talked about that on the podcast in general, like, and that's kind of how I feel about like the movement of these phases now that we're past the Infinity Saga, and what Phase 4 has felt like thus far, knowing that Wakanda Forever will close out Phase 4. It does feel like an opportunity to close it out on a very high note if that movie delivers the way it looks like it will in the trailer, the way it feels like it just has to. And it's a lot of pressure for Ryan Coogler, for the cast, for the film, for the franchise, and for the legacy that Chadwick Boseman kind of created for that. And that he leaves behind. It's really intimidating, even for me as a viewer. I can only imagine what those involved with it are feeling.
Yeah, the creative choices they had to make in that movie have been like on your mind ever since you heard they were doing it, right, Ronald? I mean, the question of like, how are they going to handle the character of not just the character of T'Challa being gone, but the actor Chadwick Boseman being kind of the heart of this cast? Because we all said in the first one that like he was the glue that held together this cast of dynamic characters, and there was something about him that seemed like he was sometimes second banana in his own movie because he was opposite some of these new great characters. And that's something Chadwick Boseman did as an actor that was very generous, because if you watch him in some of his more fiery roles, he's definitely not a guy who gives up the stage easily to another performer. But it's like that character was so reserved and so calm and so instantly indelible that it is hard to picture what they would do without him. And I was kind of like what you said, Steve. Oh, is this really coming out? Like, what, Ronald? Did you almost feel relieved to see that there is actually a movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess I should start from the beginning of my feelings. We were kind of talking about all this stuff. Yeah, so I have expressed doubt about Marvel's venture into space and magic and all that entail. Not because I'm a negative Nancy. It's just that I've seen Marvel things in animated form for like 10, 15 years. And I know how corny that can maybe come across in live action form. I've expressed it. I've kind of said it. And it at first it sounded like I was hating. And then you guys were coming around to the negativity, and I loved it. But I think, like you said, this is so, as a Marvel fan, I obviously love that Wakanda Forever is coming at the end of Phase 4. But I understand we understand the business of it. It means that, somebody could go back at this phase and be like, man, this was kind of shit. And then at the end, like you said, this book ends, with an incredible thing that I guess what I'm trying to figure out in all of this, and maybe we can talk about this kind of at the end of this whole thing. How do you feel about the handling of Chadwick Boseman's image? Does it feel exploitative in any way? Because that's been kind of the argument, and the whole thing is like, this is the bookend to the phase, but also like, are they using this whole thing with Chadwick Boseman as like a means to kind of bring the brand back to the grace that it had kind of when Black Panther came out? Is it exploitative in that way? Are they talking about his death in a way that feels exploitative?
I mean, we don't know,
Yeah,
like,
we can't know.
Like, it is a thought that, like, I definitely feel like I've considered and thought about in terms of how they could possibly handle this. I really do hope that, it, with the time they've spent to figure it out, I hope, and from everything that everybody said, the little pieces that they have said. It really, I don't know. I just have a good feeling about that.
Yeah.
I really highly doubt. I don't know. I watch my word. I don't want to say I highly doubt that the people involved with this project. I'm not even talking about like the Marvel suits. I'm talking about the cast, the crew, the crafts, like everybody involved from top to bottom. There's an ownership over this project and this sub franchise inside of the MCU, and over the legacy of what what it's going to look like going forward in terms of how they did it, how they handled it. The idea of a closing phase 4 is like this, what have you done for me lately feeling, in terms of, we're going to go see this movie, hopefully we're blown away. And you're right, people will look back and be like, phase 4 wasn't that bad because Wakanda Forever was maybe amazing. And I think that's one thing you kind of got to watch for, is like, that can't overshadow the things that you're discussing, the things that you're bringing up, because it can't be at the cost of exploiting his likeness or his celebrity or his just the landmark character that really was, which breaks my heart that it was that for so short of a period of time. I think I'm just really encouraged. I love the positivity around the cast and crew, and Ryan Coogler talking briefly about it. Seeing that was really it just made me feel really good. And I mean, let's not even skirt around it. Like, I don't even know how, like, you're gonna be able to watch this movie without bawling. Like, the trailer immediately like had me crying my eyes out. Like, Erin was there, just like, she was very it's just like even the trailer, they took so much care in making a good trailer to address what happened, in a way that we don't know the full story yet. But I think, the idea of new characters coming in, seeing familiar characters, some mystery to it, seeing the suit, and whoever is in it now. Like, I don't know, man. I was dying to see this movie, and we talked about like anticipation for movies for the rest of the year, and like what we're talking about in a bit, or you guys will talk about Nope. Like, it was my movie of the year because I wasn't sure if Wakanda Forever was actually coming out. And it is now, and I'm really happy to see that. And the trailer I thought was incredible, and man, I can't wait to see that movie.
There's a lot of heavy lifting, man, because this is the last thing this is the last thing I'm gonna say about it. So not only is it Chadwick Boseman, man, not as the loss of Chadwick Boseman, we're talking about representation of the Mayan culture, of the Aztec culture that has never really been seen on movies, motion pictures, since like Apocalypto, which is decades ago, right? Like, it's been
I'm more excited about that, about bringing in a new world into this. I mean, I want to just say that, like, as much as I love Black Panther, I think they've made several movies since Black Panther that I've enjoyed as much, if not more, than Black Panther. I don't feel like this movie has all the pressure on it that you guys were just indicating. It's not going to save Phase 4 for me. I've enjoyed Phase 4. Most of Phase 4 I've enjoyed quite a bit. Some of it I've thought was like this is not going to strike a chord with people, with the way that things have in the past. And I think that question of like the corniness of the magic or whatever, they've been trying a lot of things in Phase 4. And I think that, like, as the kids say, maybe it's mid, but it's like, I don't think it represents this like total fall off in like we've talked a lot about the quality control. I think that the possibility that the quality control, when the story's moving more and like people are feeling that momentum, that's going to feel more engaged on the creative side as well. Because, we've heard, like, for instance, just with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, a movie I enjoyed, we've heard about the story that they were originally going to do before the current screenwriter, Michael Waldron, was brought on. And we all agreed, like, oh, this actually sounds like some of the problems the movie had would have been fixed if they'd stuck with it. But it also sounded like it was an overstuffed movie that had a lot it was trying to do. So I don't know. I guess my point being, I don't know that any of these movies gets to be like, the reason why you hope for Wakanda Forever is because of Ryan Coogler being sort of in control, both as a writer and as a director, both, and as you've said, the engagement of the entire creative team. So there is something kind of special about this world that they haven't gone back to it any sooner. It's sad that we've lost the heart of it. But the exploitiveness question, I feel like what they did in the trailer with the painting was a pretty clever way to do it, because they revealed something to us along with the dialogue we're hearing. we're getting that he's died somehow. That creates a little mystery around what has happened to him. But I feel like if there's a way to do that in such a way that you're actually paying homage to the character with the same respect that you would want to see them show for the actor. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think that's so. I guess I'll just kind of put a bow on it by saying it's the same reason. The same way I felt about they're doing magic in space now is I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt. I know what you're saying about the dangers of these things, but I think right now I have no reason to think that this cast, this crew, this company is going to be doing something gross with Chadwick Boseman's image or his memory. I do think, though, that what Steve's saying is true, that there will be this moment where you're watching the movie and you're realizing, like, oh, these people are talking about Chadwick as much as they're talking about T'Challa, or just you're going to be hit by the fact of how they pull off what has happened to him, and it's going to hit like a ton of bricks. Because already, like my son and I, whenever we talk about it, we get kind of misty just because he was a young actor and everyone was excited about him. Even people who don't watch this stuff, the superhero stuff, were excited about him. So I don't know. I think that it's like, it gives this movie like a heart or an emotional wallop to it that I agree. You want to see him do it carefully, but I also think it's a rare thing for one of these movies to have that feeling of just. Like you want to see how they pay respect to him, and that's different from the cool side of I want to see them bring the Mayan culture and Atlantis and all this stuff into this because they're bringing a huge part of the MCU or the Marvel Comics universe that's been around since the beginning. They're bringing in Namor the Submariner, who is like just in comics just a monolithic, huge, specific character. So that's another thing this movie gets to do that is potentially really, really exciting for the audiences that want to see that, like, some of the iconic characters that we've been getting.
Anyway. Okay, so enough of the sad stuff. Let me rattle off all the movies, all the things from Phase 5, just so we can get through it really quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, let's get through this.
Quantumania, Agatha Harkness, The Marvels, Blade, Captain America, New World Order, Daredevil, Born Again, Echo, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ironheart, Loki Season 2, Secret Invasion, and Thunderbolts will be ending Phase 5. And then Phase 6, we have Fantastic Four, and then the 2 Avengers movies. So a massive amount of content. I don't think everything's been named at this point, obviously. Because What If hasn't been thrown into the mix. Like there's like a couple of shows that haven't been thrown into it, and so there may be some movies as well.
Right.
So how you guys feeling about? I just rattled off that's 3, 6, 9, 12, and then 12 things in the 5th phase,
and that's over 3. Like 23 and 24 is what you just described. So next, like starting Quantumania is February, right?
Starting a Phase 5.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about this. I've long been a booster of the Ant-Man portion of this. I loved Paul Rudd being brought into this thing, and I think consistently he's been like one of those little breaths of fresh air that enlivens scenes that he's in, and also he can play the emotional moment. So I'm kind of glad that they're giving this character and his setup. The Wasp is a great character. The sort of Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer portion of that has been handled well. So I just think like I want to see this family of characters get to do something big and consequential. And that just sounds like a fun movie. And of course, the stuff that they've hinted at, it sounds like this is going to be an excuse to sort of take that comic tone of the Ant-Man movies, but apply it to a more cosmic tale. So we're getting MODOK. That either means something to you or it doesn't, but MODOK is a hilarious looking, weird character. There's some unnamed as yet character that Bill Murray is playing, who I think is supposed to be a villainous role. So, this just sounds like it could be a really fun romp. Do people still use that word to describe movies?
You did.
A fun February romp. Get on your rompers, folks, and go see Ant-Man Quantumania.
Yeah.
And then Thunderbolts, I'm excited just because it's like, what are they going to do with that? The potential to put together a super team of discarded villains and put them on a Suicide Squad type mission. I mean, I think they could do a really fun job of that, especially if Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the sort of if she's the Nick Fury of that, the Contessa, her character,
right?
But I don't know who I want to see on that team, because I don't know which villains. I think that the U.S. agent is an obvious one, but outside of that, it's hard to know who would be fun. Which of the villains that are still around that aren't like super big villains. They have to be kind of shitty, low level, street level villains. What are you most excited about, Steve?
I mean, the thing is just bonkers to me is like beyond the number of things you just mentioned, Ronald, and there's a lot of places, placeholders in Phase 6 that haven't been announced. It's just the fact that we're talking about 6 years to go through the, basically to go through the end of Phase 3.
Yeah.
To go through 3 phases in 6 years with who knows how many, probably easily 20 to 25 properties.
Yeah.
Versus, it taking 10, 11 years prior to that to do that. I mean, obviously some of these are coming out on Disney Plus, and that kind of, is a spot holder, it kind of takes a spot for a movie, that we may have gotten instead.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just, that was a big takeaway for me, was just the idea that, here in July of 2022, they're saying that basically by the fall of 3 years from now, 2 more phases will be done.
Yeah.
And that's including the last film in the phase that we're in. You know what I mean? Like, that just is mind blowing to me. And God damn, that's a lot of work to do. I mean, that's a lot of heavy lifting. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And that's where we're hoping that quality control issue doesn't, you know what I mean? Doesn't really become a terminal thing.
Let's see what happens.
Let's tighten up the reins on some of this shit, and make the effects a little more special, and make the movies a little more special. I don't know. Yeah. I feel like they learned those lessons along the way too, but it's tough to know. It's really tough to know what the tone, if it's going to be a tonal mishmash, or if these movies are going to start to feel more assured, or just like they've been given the time to be developed. Like that's one thing again about Wakanda Forever, is you feel like Ryan Coogler is going to get to make, and Chloe Zhao with the Eternals, people didn't like it as well, but that movie feels like a director's style. It was hers. And I feel like what's his I can't remember his name, but the guy who directed Shang-Chi has been named to direct the Kang Dynasty. And that was a movie that we all liked, the feel and the motion of it. So it's like maybe they are going to find some way to get a little bit more of that. I mean, because they've done that with the recent ones. Taika Waititi and Sam Raimi both have like their flourishes all over their movies that they've just made for the studio. So it's just a question of like what's going to be that kind of grounding element that you were kind of referring to, Ronald, of like that's going to get people that aren't into the highfalutin fantasy stuff.
Yeah,
what's going to get those people involved? And I think that I don't see necessarily in this batch of stuff. Some projects seem like they would appeal to those people, and some seem like they wouldn't. The whole multiverse thing is really the opposite of a grounded, relatable storyline.
Right.
But I don't know. I think they've done enough teasing it that now if they really start bringing it in, maybe they will do some of those super creative things that we were sort of expecting them to do in Doctor Strange 2. And also that we all agree Everything Everywhere All at Once did on like a tenth of the budget.
Yeah.
As far as making multiverses feel like something special and emotional. Anyway, there's a lot to look forward to, but also maybe a lot to dread. If you're already getting sick of it, it doesn't look like they're slowing down in terms of the quantity.
Yeah.
But
yeah, man.
We'll see. I still gotta go see Thor.
Yeah, man.
I still need to finish Miss Marvel.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's right. All right, John, take us to
All right. Yes, so required viewing is our new thing where we rotate and one of us basically assigns a movie to the other two fellas, so that next time we get together, we all have at least seen something that we can see, because so often it's hard for us to get on the same page with differing schedules and differing attitudes about going into theaters and all that stuff. So my pick, based on the fact that we had been previously talking about the movie Thief as sort of a tribute to recently departed actor James Caan, and I was thinking about him, and I had been watching the show. I'd been laying around sick watching the show The Offer on Paramount Plus, and thinking about Godfather being like a great James Caan role, but also a rare movie that had a sequel that's considered a classic. And then I started thinking about classic films that had sort of unlikely sequels or sequels much later, and then I just instantly thought about Psycho 2, because Psycho is one of those giant. This movie sort of spawned a genre in a way. And the book it's based on as well, Alfred Hitchcock will say it all comes from Robert Bloch's book, Psycho. But it was just sort of a mid-century imagining of what a killer could be, and the psychology of that era was feeding into this idea of like, getting into the mindset of a killer, which now we know is not just a genre. It's like, it's half the, bookstore if you go in. Every book is sort of trying to go for that kind of like, there's a reason why you'd talk to a killer to catch a killer or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, so Into the Mind of a Killer, Psycho ends with this sort of feeling like it's a movie that doesn't need a sequel, and it's maybe in an era where they didn't make sequels willy-nilly to every little horror movie that came out. And then 20 odd years later, the movie Psycho 2, directed by Richard Franklin, who's kind of a disciple of Hitchcock's, and written by Tom Holland, not Tom Holland who plays Spider-Man, but a much older man who also wrote and directed Child's Play and wrote the movie Cloak and Dagger. So a guy who's all over the era of film, and if you're kind of a film geek, he's probably touched a few things that you enjoyed. Psycho 2 was also the cinematography is by Dean Cundey, who is like, I mean, look at the movies he's done the photography for, like Jurassic Park, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Halloween, The Thing. Those are just some of my favorites, but there's tons. So this movie has like a pedigree. Psycho 2 is there was a possibility when they started making this movie that it was going to be a sort of direct to cable sequel that maybe have even at one point had Christopher Walken in the role of Norman Bates.
Yeah, I saw that on the Wikipedia.
Oh no!
But instead, the screenwriter and the director said, "Let's write a script strong enough that gives Anthony Perkins a reason to want to come back to this character, which he has at times said kind of ruined his career. Prior to Psycho, he was seen as almost like a young romantic lead, and then after that, he was everyone's favorite weirdo. So it kind of gave him a career and killed his career. So for Anthony Perkins to actually want to come back, they were like, that's the benchmark of this movie's success as a script. That's when it got okay. Now we're going to announce this as the big sequel to Psycho. We're going to put it in theaters. It kind of saved the movie when they got Perkins on board. So yeah, I guess that's where I'll throw it to you guys. This was my first time watching this movie since seeing, I think this is one of those I saw in bits and pieces throughout my childhood on cable, but I never had sat down to watch the whole thing. And I think because when I was young, this is exactly the kind of horror that freaked me out. The sort of remote place, weird little hotel, you're walking around to the ice machine and somebody jumps out from behind the building and kills you, kind of murder scenario. And also when I was a little kid and I was like very skittish about things, my grandmother, I sometimes could get her to tell me the stories of like horror movies and episodes of Twilight Zone and stuff. And she told me Psycho when I was a kid. And so I think before I had ever watched Psycho, I had probably seen Psycho 2 was coming on television, and was at an age where I was thinking maybe I'm kind of interested in watching this horror stuff, but I stayed away from Psycho 2 until I just watched it. So yes, I will happily hear some of your input on this. 1983, definitely in the middle of all the slashers that are coming out, so they're competing a little bit in terms of that, trying to do some gore.
What do you think, Ron?
Alfred Hitchcock, this director is not. And that's kind of what you get very early is like, his stamp, his style is so distinct. And by that, I just mean like, I think I took for granted how special he was. I know that sounds strange because he's so praised. I did not appreciate it until, I'd say within the past 5 or 6 years, how special of a director he was. And Psycho was such an iconic movie. This one's tonally is just not even in the same planet, but there's something kind of fun about it. It feels like
it's crazy.
It's real crazy. Like it really so one of the cool things about it is Norman Bates really maybe talked to 5 people in the original. In this one, he talks to maybe 15 people. And it's really interesting to see how uneasy and how weird he can be and the choices that he makes and the things he says. And I couldn't help but think, man, this is fun as hell the whole time. Like it felt a little long, but overall, I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
It was campy. Like some of those aspects of his performance were kind of campy. Yeah. But I do, it is like trying to do something more heightened than you would think. It's almost so got a touch of satirical attitude about what it's doing. What about you, Steve?
I think the whole time, you just have this. It kind of sort of what Ronald was getting at, like in terms of however you feel about Psycho and its legacy and Hitchcock and his, filmography, but the approach to the filmmaking of this sequel, it definitely felt like it was more intentionally trying to like misdirect a lot of times, like more obviously misdirect. Some of the stuff that's being planted in the film that kind of make you question Norman's sanity again, and who all these other people, like you mentioned, Ron, all the players in this movie, the moving parts. And as the movie comes along, it you start to be reintroduced to characters that you met earlier. So like there's this idea of like a lot of red herrings, and like there's more, the idea of what Psycho was, and like probably maybe one of the ultimate red herrings. It's like this movie kind of was moving like four of them at any given time to try to make you question whether or not Norman Bates was slipping back into his former ways. But yeah, I mean, like I said last week, I remember watching this a lot when I was younger or like a teenager. Like I feel like it was always on like USA or something. And I think it's fun, like you said. It's not Psycho. It's kind of kind of sillier, a little, definitely campier. Not campy or silly to like any degree where like I feel like it's like laughable, and at least in my opinion.
There's one moment that is to me is a funny moment, and I think they must have known it was funny, and that's the moment where she's being his mother, and she's cradling him, and he's talking about the toasted cheese sandwiches.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Tom Holland, I heard an interview with him where he said for him it was grilled cheese sandwiches. that was in the script, was grilled cheese, but the director, being Australian, did not know that phrase and changed it to toasted cheese sandwiches because he thought audiences would understand that more. But the writer was saying he thought for any American, grilled cheese would be the reference because that's what your mom makes you. And he said this really kind of beautiful thing. He said that sandwich is comfort. That's the sandwich your mom makes you when you're hungry and she needs to whip something up in 5 minutes, or when you've been hurt, or when you come home from school and you're kind of sad. Like that's the unit of expression of a sandwich. But that scene where he's talking about that, and then he says that they took everything away from me, my memories, and he pauses and he says, "But not those sandwiches." They had to know that moment was kind of funny. But I also think there's sincerity, to your point, Steve. There's sincerity in the way that campy moment unfolds.
Totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's pretty much, the experience rewatching it again was pretty in line with how I remembered it. I feel like Meg Tilly kind of stood out a little more to me this rewatch.
What she's doing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like kind of like her playing the whole thing, especially with what her and her mom are doing initially, and then kind of what it pivots to. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's a fun kind of campy sequel to Psycho, which sounds crazy. But then you go watch Psycho 3 and you're like, oh, this is like actually a pretty good bridge to like how kind of crazy Psycho 3 gets.
Yes.
But it's a lot more in line with maybe what the first one was doing.
Psycho 3 is directed by Anthony Perkins, by the way.
It is,
and it is a very, talk about, Ronald, you're talking about the sort of directorial flourishes. Like this movie has, whether it can match Hitchcock's style or not, that definitely with like the mood of that house, the shadows, the color, like it's a really, it reminds me of some of my favorite slasher movies just in terms of how much there are all these pockets of darkness. And that is a creepy house, and it's a creepy setup.
Oh, yeah.
What I like about 3 is that it really pays off what seems to be what's going on at the end of Psycho 2 is the new setup, the new normal of 3, and it's a really fun sort of reveal / relationship that he has with the new corpse in town that he creates at the end of this movie. But I think that moment in the kitchen is an all-time moment for me when he seems to be poisoning someone's tea, but instead he's going to use something else. I think that moment really was just like a great jolt that the movie kind of needed towards the end, and it almost gives it this kind of demonic feeling that you are watching a movie that doesn't so much side with the killer, but Norman is, he's kind of the victim / hero of Psycho 2 in a way that in the first one you can't say is the case. And all those red herrings you're talking about, Steve, that's another thing Tom Holland talked about, was just how much he worked to make it work. He said he got to the end of the script and he wanted you to see how all the red herrings, how could someone have been here when someone else was here? Well, when Norman was locked in this room, how could someone else be down here? That he made sure to make all that work, whether it's heightened and campy or not. The whodunit aspect of it, actually is interesting. Like it does, like you could be starting to get bored. You were saying it was kind of slow. There's about 3/4 in where you're like, this is taking a little time, but I want to see what's going on because I still don't know. You know what I mean? They don't answer all the questions until basically the last moments of the movie.
Yeah.
And I think that is a fun, almost a callback to the way the first one had that sort of twist that now we all know, but the twist of like what's actually happening. Sure. Norman's weird relationship with his mother being the root of his tendencies. And I think this movie does do like a halfway job of being that 80s style sequel where there's all these cute references to the other one. But more so, yeah, just an effort to like do something legitimate, which I think is an interesting thing. This movie was reasonably successful too for its budget. It cost about $5 million and it made, about $35 million. So not a huge success, but enough to get a Psycho 3. And one thing interesting also that Tom Holland said, he said that Anthony Perkins doesn't give a shit about narrative. He said every shot for him is about like the emotion, like as almost like an art film about the emotions of the character and the mood of the moment. And so he said that you can see that in this movie a little bit, like with some scenes where you're like, what's happening here? Why is this scene right now? But also he said in the direction of 3, you can totally see like that Anthony Perkins is obsessed with mood, which I don't know, just sounded kind of interesting. But yeah, I just watched 3 after this because I couldn't resist, and I'm probably going to watch Psycho 4 too, just to kind of finish up my thoughts about their attempts to do this, to like say, oh, this was a classic film, but now it's the 80s and horror films get sequels every couple of years. Let's do it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's like you break the seal and then you can't stop making them.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So there it is.
Also, Robert Loggia not playing like a tough guy. He's playing I kept waiting for his accent to become sort of, but he was very like, he was this doctor and he was very, Norman.
Yeah.
You've been taking my advice.
What a change, man. I was expecting him to talk to Tony about cocaine or something like that.
I know, exactly.
Very like, I don't know. I enjoyed it.
Come in drunk or something, or I don't know.
Yeah.
So what's our next required viewing, Ronald?
So I was gonna choose one that was all right. With the announcement of John Wick, I'm very excited about John Wick 4. And someone popped up in the movie that literally made me shit my pants.
Literally.
Donnie Yen. Literally like
grown ass Ronald shit his pants.
Just like a peekaboo Groundhog's Day situation.
Little peeking turtle head.
Little peeking turtle. Donnie Yen is one of my favorite action stars, and there's a movie that I know that everybody hasn't seen that I feel like you guys should see, and that is 2021's Raging Fire, which is actually a 2022 American film. But Raging Fire, Donnie Yen, it is a movie that I want you guys to check out. And right. I'm gonna, So it has, I'm excited. Raging Fire.
I wrote it down.
Yeah,
it's
Donnie Yen. Yeah, force you guys to watch a Donnie Yen movie.
Well, I like Donnie Yen. I have not. I have not sought out, the stuff he's really known for. So
watch the non-American stuff. This is a non-American Donnie Yen movie because I feel like the versions of him that you're seeing is a very subdued. Like he can act his ass off on top of everything, and we've kind of seen bits of that. But yeah,
cool.
I'm
looking at it now. Looks good.
So what have we been watching?
Nope.
I have not watched Nope, but you guys have.
I've watched Nope.
So tell us what you thought of Nope.
I feel like I want to give
without spoiling the entire movie.
Yeah,
though.
I want to give a non-spoilery.
I think we can do it.
One thing that is very apparent when I watch this movie is that they gave Jordan Peele all of the keys, not just one key, every key that he could possibly get. He opened every door and he did everything that he wanted to do. Now, in that, comes a little bit of a caution that I'm going to throw up. If you are used to movies that are very straightforward, if you're used to movies that will connect every loose end, this is not the movie for you. And I encourage you actually to not see it in the movie theater, because you will be pissed. You will.
Wow.
This is not the movie for you. I'm serious, man. Like I've had maybe 10 of my friends see it that I know that are like more like casual moviegoers that are very used to a very specific type of movie. All of them hated it.
Wow.
But my friends that are good at, like, okay with letting it breathe, good with something that's not quite as clear cut in the end, they tend to be a little more accepting of this sort of movie. But this is not the blockbuster movie that people were expecting. And I think that doesn't make it a bad movie. It just makes it a little different than I was expecting, and quite a few people were expecting. But overall, it's a fun fucking movie, man. Like, it's fun, but it leaves a lot of questions after it ends. It's like, how did this happen? What happened here? Why are these things connected? How are they connected? Why the fuck did that happen? You know, that's literally every tweet I've seen, spoilery tweet that I've seen. And you know, I'm scared that that if he does one more like this, he's going to be M. Night Shyamalan to people. I don't want that to happen to him.
Yikes.
I'm not saying this is a bad movie. I'm just saying, like, what it does is incredible. But if you know what I'm saying, like, I could give you Get Out as a crowd pleasing, very big movie that I'd watch with a ton of people.
Right.
Then as you get into Us, it's kind of, but then you get into Nope. I don't know if I'd show this to everybody.
So you're saying is he experiencing a drop off?
Not a. I wouldn't say a drop off.
I feel like you're like you're priming expectations, and also sort of like
no
apologizing or something.
No, I think that there's I'll say this, and I hope that I'm not insulting people, but I'm telling you, when it comes to summer movies, people want very simple things. You know, it's like 1, 2, 3, very easily explained. It just is what it is.
Right.
And when people come to the movie, sometimes, especially for what they assume to be a bigger movie, and it was a bigger movie, the budget, it's all on the screen. It's a gorgeous, expensive looking movie.
Right.
For what you get out of it, I think you get a lot more. It's a rewarding movie, but I don't know if it's for everybody.
It's fair.
No. It sounds like I'm insulting it, though. That's not what I'm saying.
I'll be honest. My expectations are still the same level that they've been, only because I kind of feel like I have a read on him as a filmmaker. But I do agree with what you're saying, though. Like, even from the feedback I've heard from people that have shared like very general feelings about the movie without spoiling anything for me, because again, I got like a wall up because I don't want to have anything spoiled.
Yeah.
But like, I've literally heard those same things you're saying, and it's just like, you know, I think it's like I think it's like a collision of expectation, whether it's of the summer movie or the fact that this is the new Jordan Peele movie, and you know, the people that are in it, or you know, if you're a fan of any of the cast or whatever it might be. But it, you know, I'm only pressing you on it a little bit because it makes me so curious, because I've been hearing the same thing, which is not a good sign.
Here's the end of it. Here's the last part of it, though. I have been talking about this movie every day since I've seen it, and not in a shitty way. Just like it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's literally like,
with you.
Aaron saw it with me, and
did she like it or no?
She was. We didn't talk to each other for like an hour after seeing the movie.
Okay.
Not because we were fighting. It just was like, what happened? what was that? But it would also like, I think this is going to be one of those movies that's like, as the years go by, people are going to be like, holy fuck, this may have been a masterpiece. I know that sounds crazy. Like I left feeling like I can't put my fingers on it the way that I could with certain other movies, but like I feel like I was watching something that felt like I will never see anything before it or after it. It felt very special. I know that. In the end, that's what it felt like. Like it felt so uniquely special to me. So that's how I feel. What do you think, John?
I don't know. I found myself like with half of what you were saying going like I just don't agree with that at all. Like I feel like this movie is not confusing. I feel like this movie is a super straightforward, simple narrative. I mean, like there's really not any mysteries for me outside of the ones that the one that this movie is not trying to answer. But like the whole idea that this is a confusing movie, I don't quite get. I do think it's a little bit of a slow pace, maybe a slow burn is a better way to say it. Kind of movie, but when this movie was really kicking, I was thinking like, oh, no one told me this was Jordan Peele doing Steven Spielberg. Like, there's a moment late in this movie where like the assemblage of characters that we have is such a fun group, and what they're doing is so specific, and they have such a plan, and it reminds me of like that early Spielberg kind of feeling of like, just this is like an adventure. Like somehow this has like there's a hopefulness or almost to this world that is different maybe from the horror that you're expecting. And the sort of sci-fi elements. I mean, we're not spoiling maybe some of the things that people even already think they know about this movie, but the design of the sort of unknown elements that when you see the movie they become a major part of it, but when you're watching the trailers it's just kind of a few shots here and there. The visual design of that stuff and the way it's pulled off is so inventive and so fun, and that's where to me you can see all the budget. But the way that Jordan Peele, I think there's a thing that happens with him that I find is a little bit like, I wouldn't want to put the pressure on a filmmaker that people seem to want to put on one of these directors that they fall in love with. I know what it feels like to fall in love with a director and look forward to their next thing. But this idea that Jordan Peele is the first horror director to make 3 masterpieces in a row, and he's the first horror director to bring social commentary, and he's the first person to invent a new kind of horror that's like a thriller but has a point to it. And it's like, no, he's just a guy who like knows his shit and makes like movies of a certain level. And what you said, Ronald, about the way that Get Out is so much more of a crowd pleaser because it's sort of got a simpler hook to it. And then Us has got like 2 movies that both are really cool, kind of grafted onto each other. There's this amazing doppelganger home invasion thing, and then there's this mythological piece that takes a lot of story lifting to do. And the stuff you remember and love from that movie is probably from the weird doppelgangers versus regular people kind of stuff. Yeah. And then once you go underground, it's interesting and cool, but it feels like it's losing a little bit of that simple momentum that made Get Out such a propulsive thing. But yes, Jordan Peele is a guy that at this point they're going to keep giving him. They're going to say, "Well, we made what we need to make on this." There's a certain cachet to having a guy like this in our world as a filmmaker. He's doing this genre stuff. He's smart about it. So I kind of feel like in some ways that phrase "blank check movie" does feel a little bit like. This is Jordan Peele doing it his way, like you said, Ronald, like kind of not explaining it unless he has to. But I just thought it was so much more it felt so much more like a crowd-pleasing film when I was watching it, that I was thinking about those classic films of my youth and even Daniel Kaluuya, the character he gets to play, like, I've heard people say, oh, he plays a bland non-character, and it's like, have you guys never seen the movie where the lead is like a farmhand who doesn't say much? I've seen those movies. I love those. I love that Daniel Kaluuya gets to play like the guy who's standing there and kind of slumped over. Even his posture, he kind of lets his gut hang out a little bit and he walks kind of slow. He seems like a real guy who works with horses. He doesn't want to talk at length with anybody. I mean, Keke Palmer picks up the slack in terms of being a character who talks. I don't know. I just found myself so much more charmed with the characters and the world. And I liked the way the little moments when there's a reveal, it's a simple reveal. It is sometimes very simple, like they figure out certain things. Oh, this is how you avoid the danger. There's some things that are very simple that work, or this is how you invite the danger, as it gets on in the movie. I felt like I could feel the same sense when this movie ended of the audience kind of being like half like, oh, yay. Like there were some people going, kind of tepidly, and I was one of them. I was like, "You're waiting for other people to do it," and you're like, "Oh, we're not going to clap for the." I clap at movies. I'm a dumb. But then there was this general kind of, you could feel people's, rustling in their seats, and I was like, oh, I guess people. But I felt that at the end of Wes Anderson movies before. I felt that at the end of. I could probably start naming every beloved director who gets to do what they want to do. Sometimes you get to the end and you feel like, oh, half the crowd was not here for that. But I love when it went to black and said directed by Jordan Peele, And if I am going to give him credit for what he's doing on a certain level, there are some neat things you can see are him trying to play with classic horror tropes. And one of the things he does, this is one of those movies, not the first, guys, let's calm down. Jordan Peele's not the first guy ever to do this, but he does a good job of making open space scary the way that normally in a horror movie it's all about claustrophobia being scary. In this movie, there are moments where a character is just out under the night sky and you're terrified at the possibility of what could rush out of those low-hanging clouds up above them, but you don't even know what it is yet. You just know there's something up there, And the idea of making the sky scary is one of my favorite horror sci-fi tropes that you can do. Suddenly the thing that represents hope is now nope. But I don't know. And I mean, I'm not trying to oversell it. I just feel like whenever I hear people talk about this movie, it's like, are they underselling the charms of this movie? It seems like it's a much more enjoyable movie. And there's one subplot that really seems to throw people off. And I'm like, the reason that's in the movie is so clear. It's such a clear metaphor for what's happening. There's a certain character who his story is all tied up in this metaphor. And I want to say something about it, Ronald. Do you think the meaning of that plotline would have been more easily gettable by the audience if the original casting because Jordan Peele wanted Jesse Plemons to play that character, not Stephen Yeun. Stephen Yeun comes along and is great, and he's great in the movie. But that Jesse Plemons would have played that character, and I think people would have gotten the point of it more if they weren't thinking there was something about there was some racial component to that character's story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. The plot. Oh, yeah.
You would have accepted a white boy in that part more, as far as what the theme's trying to tell you.
I agree. I do agree.
That's just a thought I had.
You coined a phrase that I am going to stick to, that you have to understand. It's like a thing. It's like there's a simple momentum is a real thing.
Yes.
And what you have to understand is the average movie watcher is not coming for something that breaks too hard from what they know. I'm telling you, it's like that with technology. It's like that with movies, TV. It's like that with everything. There's a simple momentum. There's like a thing. Get out, used the beats that you know, and then flip them upside down, right?
Yeah.
And then once you got into these last two movies, it's a little different. He really did kind of shake it up a little bit. One thing that has to be said is that the dynamic between Kiki, Daniel, and Brandon Perea, his first movie, is fucking amazing. It's like Spielberg. It's like Stranger Things. It's like, it's that fucking good. Like the chemistry between those three characters is unreal.
And the humor that comes out of character, not out of one-liners, but comes out of character is And when the fourth character joins them later in the movie, that I thought that was a great addition to the vibe too. It was a funny, wild element. Anyway.
Yeah. So everything doesn't need a meaning behind it. Some things are just artistic choices, and I'm okay with that too. I'm okay with a random character. Why people? Okay, here's the new thing. The new thing is that Black people weren't in these things. That's what's new. It's not that these things never existed. It's that characters have never felt so lived in that were Black characters. That's brand new. It's
with a history and a legacy and a family and all this. Yes, you're right.
These
you're right
things didn't exist before. So
that's exciting. That's exciting to see still.
So
and that's sad that it's exciting.
What you're talking about is like the phenomenon of like artsy, kind of outside of the borders horror that you and I and Steve are very used to seeing. But audiences that never watch these stuff because they didn't have the representation, didn't hop into it. Like I could be like, hey, watch The Watcher, but my friend would probably be like, where the Black people?
No.
But it just is what it is. It just is what it is. Representation does matter, and it does subvert some of the expectations for what people are watching. So
I remember watching Us and feeling that too, that like this is just not the move, just a family going on a vacation and some shit happens to them.
yeah,
It's like the fact that it wasn't as much of like a racial allegory as Get Out was. Some people I think were thrown by, but I was like, oh, I see kind of what you're saying. And again, it's like I hate being excited to see it because it should be so that we're not excited to see it. But that is true. I mean, I'm not implying Jordan Peele's not doing anything new. What I'm saying is just that I think that like let's not put so much pressure on the guy that like he's a really interesting director and he's a really smart guy. Let's just enjoy his movies. And again, maybe you can sit one out. Maybe someone will say Nope was not for me. But I don't think it represents like a flag in quality so much as maybe he is, he's feeling his oats. He's definitely at a point where, as we've said, he can make the movie that he wants to make. Yeah. So, yeah. But I will maintain, I think this movie is, if it's maybe too much of a slow burn, maybe that's the thing for people. But I think when it gets where it's going, it's got all the kind of the pulse pounding thrills you would want from this type of story. And it's not like we haven't seen movies before that take their time getting to the crazy like effects.
For sure. But yeah, go ahead
and see Nope.
Yeah, for real.
Go
like
ahead and see Nope. Boop.
Legitimately cannot wait for you to see it, Steve. I'm looking forward to you seeing it, and I really want to know your opinion because I value you guys' opinion about movies. So
yeah, I'm excited. I might try to go see it tomorrow or maybe this weekend. Hopefully, if things line up, that'll be the plan. Cool. Anything else you guys want to mention before we
Nothing
wrap
else.
up?
You want to talk about anything you've seen before we wrap it up?
Man, I mean, the only thing I really watched this week was that new Nathan Fielder show, The Rehearsal, on HBO Max. I'm
loving seeing what he's doing with an HBO budget. It's just so crazy.
So awesome. And it does kind of bum me out that it's like not getting promoted at all, though. Like
it is weird. It is weird.
I feel like
people
HBO
are talking
is
about
like
it
doing
though.
Nothing for it at all. And so I've been watching that, and I love him. I love it so far. And then I started watching that new show on Peacock called The Resort.
Okay, how is it?
I really like it so far. So I think they put the first 3 episodes out. That came out today. I think the day that we're recording is the 28th. But yeah, like it's just a nice little like onion, layers of an onion little mystery at the center of this couple whose like relationship is kind of falling apart, and they visit this resort to try to repair their relationship on their anniversary and kind of stumble upon this mystery of some missing people. And it's so far I'm digging it. I think there's a total of 8 episodes. Let me look it up real quick. That are going to be coming out. But yeah, it started this week. William Jackson Harper is in it, and what's her name? Christina Milioti, who I love, who unfortunately Made for Love didn't get renewed for a 3rd season at HBO Max. So this is my new fix of hers. But yeah, Nick Offerman's in it in a small role.
Cool.
Skylar Gisondo is in it, who most people probably know from The Righteous Gemstones. Now he plays Danny McBride's older son in that show. But yeah, I'm digging that too. So I'm just kind of watched a couple of TV series, trying to catch up. Finally finished Ozark. We can talk about that later, maybe. That's a lot to unpack. But I finally got through all that and can wrap that up.
I liked the ending. I know people were mixed on it, but I thought it was a chilling note to end the show.
In general, I agree. Yeah. I have some other feelings. But
I'm not saying like the overall final season was my favorite. I'm just saying I feel like where they were leading up to, I felt like was the appropriately like, oh shit, kind of like sinking feeling kind of about bad guys winning maybe.
Right. But yeah, I don't know. That's the only other stuff I didn't watch any other real movies this week, I don't think. It's been a weird week, but hopefully I can check out Nope this weekend.
Yeah.
And I want to see that BJ Novak movie Vengeance too.
Yeah,
me too.
About it.
That's supposed to be pretty good.
Me too.
He's smart. I mean, like, I'm always open to him doing something really interesting from a writing standpoint, even if I'm not always in love with like that show he did. I thought was interesting, but not.
Right.
What was that called?
Oh.
I don't remember.
Yeah, announcing the world or something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wanted to mention one show that I watched most of. Amazon has a show that is kind of the same vein as Stranger Things that I think was so fucking good.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it'll sneak up on you. Paper Girls, man.
Oh yeah,
Paper Girls
yeah.
It's like has a lot of heart. The kid actresses in it are really good, and is a super cool, simple premise that gets a little more complicated as the show goes on.
It's based on a comic book too, so it's got good source material.
Yeah. So these kids are kind of paper girls delivering papers, and they all kind of you see their personalities, and what feels like a thunderstorm and a series of events happen, and then they seek refuge by going to one of the kids' homes. And when they go to the home, they realize that the person in the house that they thought was their house is the older version of them. And then shit gets weird from there. Ali Wong plays the older kid, the older version of the kid. I don't really know the kid actresses, but it's a really well acted show. It gets really janky. It gets weird. It gets weird, and the kids are cursing like crazy. Like it's like you take this cursing in Stranger Things and then you double it. You put a lot of fucks in it. You put fucks and shits in it, and you got Paper Girls. It's a fun fucking show, and I would love, once my kid gets old enough to show this cool cast of diverse little girls cursing and delivering papers and dealing with bullies.
There you go.
Yeah, so fun fucking show.
She's 2, 3. You're gonna be watching that with her?
Yeah. Yes, I would get her some brass knuckles too while we watch it. So yeah, it's a fun show, man.
And that's our show.
Yeah. That's it. We covered a lot of stuff.
Yay. Movieschmovie.com is the website. You can go there. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, you can go there to subscribe on any of the podcast platforms that you probably have ever heard of. You can listen to the podcast there. You can jump over to YouTube from there or any of the social media sites, but specifically YouTube for the video portion of this podcast. If you'd like to subscribe there, hit that bell so you get notification when Ronald drops the video version of each week's podcast. There's some bonus stuff in there that you can only see if you watch us talk about movies and TV shows.
That's true.
For
instance, my glasses acting and you shuffling papers from our courtroom.
Yeah.
I mean,
earlier.
I wasn't going to spoil it, but I mean, go watch it and see what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And then a high quality version of all the Marvel logos.
Yeah,
for
there you
Phase
go.
5 and 6.
Ronald will get those and put them in this, and it'll be there, guys. All kinds of cool shit. All right, cool. Well, see you guys next week, and we'll be doing Ronald's film for the required viewing, and I guess whatever else we happen to see. Maybe if I see Nope, we can maybe go into some spoilers, but yeah, we'll see then. But as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.